Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Bartz with Network Consulting Services. Welcome and thank you for joining our IT Onboarding Horrors webcast today. With me today is Bryan Hadzik, CTO here at NCSI. Good morning, Bryan.
Hi, everybody.
And we're giving away a backpack today and a sweatshirt. How are we going to do that, Bryan?
How about the best question gets the backpack?
Best question, so go ahead and put that in the Q&A section there throughout the webinar. And I think that's pretty much it. Bryan, let's go ahead and dive right into this IT Onboarding Horrors webinar.
All right, thanks, John. I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for attending today. I got a couple of questions. What does the first day for a user at your company look like? Is it an empty cubicle with no access? Why is IT so involved in the hiring process? Isn't this an HR function? But unfortunately we get roped into it quite a bit. I don't know if you pay attention to LinkedIn, but I've seen a funny trend these days of pictures of people's first day. And it shows their desk, and it shows the water bottle and the sneakers and the jacket they got and the shirt and all the marketing collateral. I want to see a picture of all of the access that they had, and that wasn't 3 weeks before they were able to log into the ERP application and things like that. So that onboarding process is very difficult, and I want to talk about the details why, and some of the solutions we have from Ivanti with the automation and identity engine that can help solve some of those problems. So we're going to use our sample company today. It's a company called Virtril. This is just our made-up company that we use to demonstrate the software. So first, let's talk about the typical HR onboarding process. So for those that aren't familiar with us, we have a very robust ITSM-based implementation team. So we have a whole team of people that help implement ITSM processes at organizations. And we help create these kinds of flowcharts. So this is actually from a real customer that we helped create. And it helps illustrate the problem that hiring someone is not as simple as it seems. Maybe everyone else that's involved thinks it's simple, but as this demonstrates, it's a very complex process with lots of different decisions, lots of different actions, things like that. So this is a process that we help sit down and help create, and what that turns into is something like this. Whereas we need to create a task. That's what all those green boxes are. We're creating a task. Right now, today, a task is almost always fulfilled by a human being. So a person is assigned a task to do something. That could be anything from going and creating an account in Active Directory, getting them a security badge, connecting to the email system and setting up their email account, connecting to ERP, payroll, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We create these tasks, and we ask the humans to do them. Well, we all know how humans are. They're sometimes slow. They take time. They maybe make mistakes. Bob does it one way and Jim does it a different way. And lastly, they cost money. Having those people actually go through those tasks cost us dollars to be able to actually do. So what we want to do is we want to change out the people with automation. And the important part behind this is we're not necessarily getting rid of the workflow. We're continuing that exact same workflow. We're taking out the trivial parts. No one in IT is excited about creating Active Directory accounts or connecting to Exchange or creating a payroll accounts. These are mundane tasks that users don't want to do. So they're going to be very thankful that we're going to automate them. Nobody's going to be put out of a job because we are creating a smarter workflow that is better at provisioning users. So today we're going to be talking about that user onboarding and offboarding story. However, this automation engine can do automation for just about anything, connecting to virtual systems, or automating the way that people ask for applications, or automating the way that certain resources are given out. So we're just picking on kind of the tip of the iceberg here today that is that onboarding example. So what we're going to talk about is I'm going to actually show you what it looks like kind of in real life. What I'm going to do is start where most hiring happens in the ecosystem today, and that's over in HR, right? HR hires people, and they put them into their HR management system. In this case, I have Orange HRM. It's just a free open source HR system that I use for our Virtrilo company here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and hire someone and walk through that process, what that looks like. So let's just go over here to our employee list. We're going to add a user. In this case, we're going to add a user, Johnny, last name Adams. He's from the Addams family. And we're going to hit save on that. We're going to go down to his contact details, and we're going to put in his mobile phone number. Now, what I've programmed my automation engine to do is to actually reach out to that end user and send them a message when they've been hired. So what I do, and I'm just doing a screen mirror to my phone here. What I do is the engine says once every minute, go out and check against the HRM system and see if there's any new users. And if there's a new user, then go ahead and create that user account and notify the user that the account has been created. For example, oftentimes we're going to have the cell phone of that potential employee as part of the HR process. So being able to communicate that out to them should be very easy via text message, or it could be, we email their supervisor, or we could email their personal account. I personally prefer text message because if we're going to email something like that's sensitive, like a password, it's going to be a little bit more secure. Okay, so here's that text message that I just got. And it says, welcome to Retrillo, Johnny. It tells me what my username is. It tells me what the support telephone number for the service desk is. And it talks about me being able to log in to VDI. So it gives me the URL to vdi.retrillo.com, and it tells me what my password is. So the user gets this, and obviously you can time this whenever you want, first day of work, before they start, et cetera. All of this is customizable. The way that I've crafted it can be customized to whatever your kind of organization wants to be. So know that you can change it however you want. So let's go and log in here really quick as J Adams. And we set a secure password, so let me type that in really quick. Okay, so this is just VDI. This is not part of the solution that we're selling. This is just, an example to show that the user can go and log in. So they've been provisioned a Windows 10 desktop, and that just came from, whatever kind of logic I created as part of their user profile. In this case, all just users that are created in the system have access to log into a Windows 10 VDI session. So we've notified the user. The user knows how to log in. The user is able to log into their system. Obviously, if we go over here and you look at, for example, here's my domain controller. It's created a user. That user exists and has their phone number associated with it over an Active Directory. And no user had to go back and actually create that. That was just automatically done. The HR system did the work, right? The HR employee created it. We didn't have to get involved with that process to get this person onboarded for their first day. Okay, so the user logs in. They're inside the ecosystem now. What's the first couple of things that they're going to do? They're going to go and try and customize their environment, right? So they're going to download software that they want and customize it to their liking. So, what the user going to do, they're going to go and download Chrome, right? They're going to go to superdeluxechrome.com and you've been on the internet long enough to know that there's a lot of garbage out there. Users are downloading crap maybe that they're not supposed to. So if the user gets lucky and downloads the right link, or they download a bogus link, what's going to happen is they're going to save this. This is chrome.exe. They're going to open that up and they're going to run it, right? Chrome doesn't need administrative privileges. They can install that without admin rights. Well, our application control system is going to kick in and it's going to deny that. We use a concept of trusted ownership, saying that because the user put this executable there, we are not going to allow it, as opposed to executables that we put there, which we obviously trust because we're the trusted owner, and we're going to trust those. So you don't have to manage those white lists. It's whitelisting without the list. So we're not going to allow that user to download Chrome. Even though, they've attempted to, or maybe they've done it in the past, we're going to direct them to this, the software portal. The software portal gives them the ability to request that software. Our version of an app store, we're going to show these applications that have already been presented out to them. In this case, it's an Office or Chrome or, whatever you want to flesh out in this application store for the user. And, it's not just going to give a download for, chrome.exe. When the user clicks on this, it's actually going to go and the system will download it. The system will install it with system level privileges, so the user doesn't have to have any higher level permissions associated with it. So you can see it's already downloaded. It's already installing. Here in a second, the icon will show up on the desktop. So steering them away from going and grabbing their own applications because maybe we didn't give them enough applications to start with. let's provide them with an application store that they can go and get whatever applications that they want to. Now, I'm just showing basic examples where they can just do it because we don't have to pay for Chrome, things like that. But if you wanted to create a more complex workflow where we ask for permission, and it has to get approved, and it has to be purchased, and POs and all that stuff, that obviously can be created from a workflow on the back end. So what other kind of things do users use? We'll just talk about that while Chrome still here gets installed. Users like to install fonts, right? Let's go to a website that installs fonts. And let's just grab one and go and install it. People who have done this before know that from an administrative perspective, fonts require full admin rights to be able to install. And when we open up the font, you'll be able to tell here, because it has that little shield up here at the top that says, hey, I'm going to ask for admin rights. Let's go ahead and install that. And I've already installed this font, so I'm just going to say, yes, I want to replace it. And it's going to install that font. Now, what happened there was we recognized the application that was running, which was the font installer, and we forced administrative rights for this particular case. And what this did was it gave full admin rights for that particular application to run. So the user doesn't have to call into the help desk and ask to install that particular font. So we've given out admin rights individually, kind of with a scalpel instead of with a sledgehammer that existing admin rights usually work based on. So the user now has downloaded that font that they wanted to. They've installed it. They didn't have to ask for permission to be able to do that. Obviously, you can control who can install and what rights you're giving out. But you can see we have Chrome installed on the end user machine there. So that's how the application process should work, without having to interact with the help desk at all. Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen is a user is going to access something that they've been giving to, like for example, the ERP application. I've known that this person's going to be in sales or marketing or whatever reason. I've created a shortcut automatically for them based on their group membership to access the ERP application. So they're going to go ahead and log into the ERP application, which is a web-based interface. In this particular case, it worked. I apologize. I needed to break it before I showed the demo. Let's go break it really quick. And let's hit refresh one more time. So what does a user oftentimes go and look at? They get an error message, right? And in this case, they don't know what it means. They don't know what error can't connect to database is. They obviously can't fix that. So what is going to happen in this case? Well, oftentimes the user is going to go and call into the help desk. So let's use the example of that, and let's go call into the help desk. So I'm going to get back onto my phone here. I'm going to call, and I'm going to hopefully turn it up so everyone can hear it okay. And let's call into our Virtualo help desk.
Thank you for Virtualo. Your call may be monitored or recorded for quality purposes. To speak to the IT service desk.
So we're going to talk to the IT service desk, so we're going to press 1.
Human resources, please. Hello, thank you for calling the Virtualo IT service desk.
We are experiencing an ERP system login failure.
If you would like to create a ticket for this and receive an automated callback upon resolution, please press 1.
So I'm going to press 1.
Agent, please press 2.
Because that's the issue I'm having. I'm having an ERP login. So it's
is
going to read out the incident number back to me. You don't have to listen to that. But what happened there was I called into the service desk, and there already is an ERP outage. The service desk knows about this outage, and so they've created an announcement based on a major incident to report back that particular problem is happening. So what happens is I can actually subscribe to that ticket so that when it's fixed, I just went ahead and fixed our ERP issue. I wish all issues were that easy to fix. So we're going to hang up our user here. And we're going to, they're going to get a call when that issue is fixed. So let's see what they say.
This is an automated message regarding ticket number 11445 is closed, which will greatly improve your day and bring a smile to your face. Good.
So what's happened there is we've told the user that the issue is fixed. They're going to go back to the ERP system and this time, be able to log in. So obviously I'm just faking it here to show kind of what the principle is, but it proves a very important thing when it comes to an IT service desk, and that's the concept of deflection. Deflection is being able to solve the customer's problem without having to take the time of a technician. And in that case, you saw it. I called in with an issue. I didn't talk to a technician, but I was able to understand that there was a problem, and I was able to be notified when that particular issue was resolved. So I deflected that. Again, when you have an outage of your major application, having 1,000 people calling to the help desk does not make you fix it any faster. It makes it worse, right, with all these deluge of calls. So we've integrated with our service desk to automatically do that based on a particular announcement. So what are the kind of deflection things can we do? What happens if a user forgot their password, for example? How could we interact with them in that context? So let's call back in one more time, and let's say that we've forgotten our password.
Call may be monitored or recorded for quality purposes.
So we're going to talk to the IT help desk again.
IT service desk, please press 1. Hello, thank you for calling the Bertrillo IT service desk.
We're going to skip past that and say we just want to talk to an agent.
To reset your domain password, please press 1.
There we go. So I can reset my domain password.
Please press 2. For authentication, please enter your employee ID followed by the pound sign.
So I'm putting my employee ID.
To confirm your identity,
maybe I'm putting in the last four of my social. Now,
your credentials did not match.
In reality, if I actually had my social and employee ID information in there, it would read me back out what my password was and unlock my account or whatever kind of steps that you'd want to go through. It would also go and create a ticket associated with that particular user, and it would make it so we would understand that they opened and closed the ticket automatically. Again, we deflected. One of my favorite parts about that is you got to remember that when users are calling into the service desk, they are already in a moment of weakness, right? They are coming from a position of vulnerability. They may be a highly trained, highly paid employee of the corporation. Yeah, they're having to call maybe one of our most junior employees and ask for something that may be a repeated thing or that they think they should be able to do without anyone's interaction. So I love this because it lets people off the hook a little bit, right? They can go reset their password without having to talk to a person. And the fact that it's over the phone, sure, I wish that everyone was tweeting and using AI and Alexa to open up incidents, but I live in the real world. And the real world is we still get a huge number of calls. And so being able to, answer the phone and resolve those issues is really important to us. All right, let's call in one last time, and let's get to something that actually is a problem. We're having an issue with our printer or a piece of hardware or something like that that can't be resolved automatically. So let's see, what kind of interaction we can do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a technician's help desk here. So I'm going to be an agent. In this case, I'm on the help desk, and I'm waiting for calls to come in. So
to speak to the payroll department.
So we're going to talk
Hello, thank you for calling the Bertrillo IT service desk.
IT service desk, and then we're going to say we're having
To reset your domain password,
a hardware
press
problem.
1. For hardware issues, please press 2. For requesting IT.
So you can see what happens is it's going to automatically open up a new window on my machine here, and it's going to automatically open up a ticket and fill in information like my caller ID information to that ticket. What's great about this is, let's go ahead and hang up here. What's great about this is it makes it just that much easier for an agent to use the system. We have this little agent where they can say they're in a state of ready or not ready, where they can receive calls or not. That integrates over into our Service Manager product to be able to automatically do a screen pop. Users really complain about the users of the service desk, the technicians, always complain about the work it takes, the paperwork they have to do to close out an incident. I'd like to be able to automatically open up an incident for them, fill in pertinent information, let them apply a template based on, very, very common problems, and make it so it's incredibly easy for a technician to be able to open and close that ticket. So they don't really have any excuse anymore for being able to make sure that those tickets are open and closed. Okay, so the technician helps and resolves that incident, and that user moves on. Now, what about maybe this particular user was doing something inappropriately or something they weren't supposed to? Let's terminate them. Let's see what the termination process can look like. So here's the user, using the ERP application, doing whatever they want. Again, that traditional termination process is really complicated because it involves HR, and they got to call us really quickly, and it's a bit of a problem. So in the HR system, they have a terminate field here, and they're going to say they want to terminate immediately. And again, what happens is I have created a workflow that says every 1 minute I want to check to see which users have been potentially terminated, and those users that are terminated, I want to force them off their VDI session. I want to disable, or I think in my case, I delete the Active Directory account, and I send them a text message indicating that they're terminated. So that may not be the most polite way of doing it, but in my particular example, I can just show that that's happening. So like I said, every 1 minute it kicks in and evaluates all the users that have been potentially fired here, and then it will kick them off. The great part is, again, IT doesn't have to do this. They're not directly involved in that process. This is an HR process that is happening. So there's my text message saying that they've been terminated. You can see they got forcibly logged off that particular VDI session, and that user is now terminated in the ecosystem. So again, this is the way that I've set it up. These tools that we give you as part of the Automation Identity Suite let you create that workflow however you want to. You know, out of the box, it's a little bit of a blank slate where it says, well, what do you want it to do? How do you want to interact with your users? This gives you the ability to, you know, craft it however you want to. Let me jump back over here really quick. I want to show you a tiny bit of the back end, not get into too much of the nitty-gritty details, and I'll jump over to some of the questions that we have. This is kind of some of the logic of what it looks like in our automation engine, where we're creating various steps using connectors. Connectors are really the magic behind it. What that gives us is the ability to easily connect to third-party systems. Go get 10 programmers in a room and you can cobble together any kind of automation system. We want to make it so that the day after we leave, you can go and still manipulate and change the system. So here's a great example of that. This is the creating an Active Directory user page. You know, this is not a huge amount of difficulty to understand. I can see that is very similar to where I create an Active Directory account today. You see the boxes down at the bottom are the same boxes when you're creating a user directly natively in Active Directory. So we want to make it so that the user, the people who administer this system don't need to be programmers. If they want to go in and change, well, we've done previously first name, last name, and now we're going to do last name, first name with a dot in the middle, whatever. You can see it wouldn't be very difficult to go in here and manipulate it for these connectors. So again, the connectors are really the heart of the system, being able to connect to your HR system, to things like Active Directory, your phone system, your payroll system. You know, we have several hundred connectors, and they're only growing more and more every single day, to make it so that you don't have to open up the book on how the API works for a particular solution in order to integrate it into your environment. We have a great audit history of that. So everything that we do, we are going to have a paper trail or an electronic trail that says when things were offered to them, when it was completed. So in here, in this case, you can see exactly, you know, when the job kicked off, who it was assigned to, when it was delivered. So from an audit and compliance perspective, when someone comes in and says, you know, hey, when was this user terminated? When was this user given access to this particular application? Or more importantly, one thing I think we're terrible at, terminating is easy. You turn off the account and they're dead. What about when they change jobs? You know, being able to take away rights to certain applications that maybe they shouldn't have access to anymore. You know, showing the retirement of that or the reclamation of the access to that particular system. So we have a great paper trail associated with that. And, you know, this really just highlights the tip of the iceberg, like I said, inside the Ivanti capabilities. So we've been talking quite a bit about kind of the right-hand side with our identity and automation, but we also touched on some of our stuff in the unified endpoint management, where we were doing user profile and personalization and setting those shortcuts ahead of time, you know, software distribution, where we're giving them, you know, access to those applications. In that middle column, we use some of the device control. You saw we opened up a ticket in our ITSM-based system. We used our voice automation. We didn't even really get into the IT asset management. The point being is that there are so many pieces to this puzzle. Onboarding and offboarding is just the first start. Some great examples that customers have come up with that have used the automation engine for is things like provisioning virtual machines. You know, virtual machines cost us money. Developers ask for them, and they forget to turn them off. And, you know, maybe they're up in AWS and they're, you know, charging us by the hour. being able to create a workflow to provision out virtual machines to users that have a timing system. Hey, if it's 90 days, we're going to go and deprovision that virtual machine. Or if you want it to be larger than 90 days, you need to go through a workflow that's an approval mechanism to get your boss to approve of it for more than 90 days. And, just the sky's the limit when it comes to that automation. I know we talked a little bit about, onboarding, offboarding, but remember that's a much bigger piece of the puzzle. Okay, so this is some of the other partners that we deal with that we weren't talking about today. Obviously, today was a big focus on Ivanti. I want to jump over to our Q&A section and start asking or answering some of the questions about what we've gone through here today. So I have a question here that asks, what's the difference between the end user workspace and the portal manager? The gist of it is, if you're an existing Ivanti customer that owns the endpoint management technology, those two technologies are in the process of being merged into the same. So depending on what version you're on, it may be called something slightly different or behaves in a slightly different way, but the end user workspace and the portal manager are essentially the same thing. Being able to deliver to an end user consumable items, be they shortcuts or, just like you saw me, applications. So like I said, we're going through a little bit of a name change associated with that, but the fundamental underlying architecture is there in almost any version of Ivanti Endpoint Manager. I have a question talking about verifying the HR and I-9 completion stage. So Ivanti is never going to be an HR system. What we're going to do is be the engine and the workflow associated with that. So, back here, if we jump into our workflow that we described here, we're going to create one of these steps that says, send a request out to the I-9 system or the verification system. That's probably pretty early on in the process, long before we're getting to, creating Active Directory accounts. So the ability to interact with a third-party system, be it a Workday or a insert pretty much any other HR system that you have out there, we're going to connect to it and have that be part of the process. So at one of these stages, when we automate it, we could say, stop the cycle, reach out to the verification, I-9, whatever that process is, and don't proceed until those steps have been made. So we're not going to take on the direct burden of answering those HR questions, but we can be that machinery that has the logic gates. If we check this database and it shows they haven't been confirmed, don't allow it to go on to the next step. So hopefully that answers the question. Another question, how do you test for accessibility? Does it work with people who cannot use a mouse and screen reader due to visual impairments? That is a fabulous question. I actually don't have the answer to that. Nothing that we do is amazingly different than most Windows applications. Again, I'm just utilizing typical Windows machines here with typical logins and web pages and so forth. Most of the Ivanti automation engine is a back-end process. The user doesn't directly interact with that. For example, I was using Microsoft's VDI. You could substitute Citrix or VMware or whatever else. So that kind of direct user interaction, I don't have a great answer on the accessibility, but that's something I can take a look at and follow up with everyone on. Okay, another question. Is there a way to filter which programs, applications are authorized to be downloaded and to block unauthorized apps and games? So that's kind of a two-part question, so slightly more complex. What I would say is, I'm not actually logged in anymore. I got fired and I can't connect. The idea is, let's, number one, essentially stop all applications from being run that we didn't authorize. So you saw me when I downloaded Chrome. You could insert a game, you could insert a legitimate application, an illegitimate application, a piece of malware, anything. If it was not on the machine when we put it there, when we gave them the machine, they are not allowed to run it. And then any applications that they need to get need to be given by that the software portal that I showed, that I opened it up. Again, in my example, I only had Chrome and Office, but we would deliver all of the applications through that mechanism. So by turning that on, that default blocks unauthorized everything else. If we didn't put it there, it can't run. Even legitimate things. A lot of people would say, well, Chrome, that's legitimate, that's fine. Well, yes, but in my example, I don't want them downloading Chrome. I don't want unauthorized applications on my network. So unless we put it there, it's going to be denied. And the traditional whitelisting style applications that we've done in the past, they're just doomed to fail. You can't manage a list of 30,000 executables. So what we use is the concept of trusted ownership. Kind of what that looks like is take any file on the system, and let's just go to a directory here and look at a file like regedit. Regedit is an executable. We don't really put it there. It just kind of arrives with the installer. I'm going to look at the owner. Who owns this file? If we own it, the IT department, trusted installer, someone on the help desk, these are people that we trust. If we own it, we allow it to run. If the user owns it, we deny it from running. 99.99% of applications will be owned by us. There is that very weird exception that truly the user does go and download it, and you can create exceptions for that, but then you're managing a list of maybe 10 applications or 20 applications that are the extreme exception versus having to say, yes, it's okay to run Office. Well, of course it's okay to run Office. We put it there. Why wouldn't we be okay to run Office? So using that trusted ownership, it cuts down on the management layer of controlling what applications they run pretty extensively. Like I said, if we put that in place and give them a way to get authorized applications, anything they download, we're going to deny. They could be a full admin and they could download something and we're going to deny it, or they could go into programs and features and turn it on and we're going to deny that as well. Next question, can you automate the provisioning of virtual servers? Absolutely. So in our identity director here, we have these things called entitlements. So entitlements can be anything from asking for an application like 7-zip, asking to a printer, this is the Abu Dhabi color printer, asking for a Nutanix service. Look at this, adding a virtual machine to the domain. So this is again, the magic that you're not going to have to write code to be able to do this. You follow a workflow engine. So this is something that I'm only going to give to certain people. That's called the qualification. I'm not going to allow the receptionist to add a virtual machine to my domain, but if I wanted to go in here and say, well, if you are in a certain OU or you're a certain group, then this entitlement shows up and you have the ability to request this. Then we have the workflow associated with it. So these are all the steps for adding a virtual machine from the domain. Maybe at one point we have to ask their manager for approval. So here's where we ask the manager for approval. It sends them an email. Do they have to put in a reason for rejection, et cetera. As it keeps going down here, you'll see things where we're actually going to reach out to maybe a domain system that we have that verifies host names, and we're going to find the next available name and IP addresses and things like that. And eventually we're going to connect to VMware. And so this would be the workflow for provisioning out a virtual machine. And then, almost just importantly is the deprovisioning, right? That's how we deliver it, but be able to return it. What would that return process look like? Is there a timer and we're going to automatically delete it after a certain amount of time? So you create these workflows to be however you want. This one's, I think, pretty complex. I don't think most people are going to have it necessarily as complex as this, but you get to control how that works. So adding a virtual machine to the system is just one example. Insert lots of different processes. Anything from doing backup systems to developers requesting access to certain systems, bringing it over to security when people are asking for a change to the firewall. Almost anything can be automated. It's just a matter of, is it worth the time? So repetitive tasks like this that are done, taking away time of expensive people are really ripe for the picking for automating. Okay, so that was another question was very similar to that. What was the software for utilizing the create and decommission of VMs? This was essentially it. This is part of our identity director, our entitlement catalog. And again, virtual machines and this is a VMware virtual machine, is just one very small example. Anything from Nutanix, here's adding SimpliVity. This is adding a route to our NetScaler. I've seen complicated provisioning processes where we're de-provisioning a web server from a load balanced environment, and we have to tell the load balancer to take it out of the load balance session. Then we need to reboot it and patch it, and then it needs to be brought back online, check to see if the service works, then brought it back into the fold of load balancing and things like that. So these are just a bunch of examples that are in the sample database here, but obviously you're going to go and create this to connect to just about any system that you can imagine. Texting a password isn't HIPAA compliant is a reasonable workaround. Texting was just something I came up to tell you the truth because it's a fun little gimmick to show off. You do it however you want to. Find out what compliant mechanism is and create that action. So here in my automation, I have my create Active Directory account. Here's all the tasks in here. Here's the command I'm using. I'm just calling out to Twilio or something like that to send it out. You add whatever you want. If you want to send them an email, if you want to send the person that's setting up an email, that's great. You can choose pretty much any action that you want to deliver it to them, and it can follow whatever process that you want to. So you could have it be set by the HR person. You saw me over here in my HR system. I could have just as easily created a field in my add employee that says set what the password is going to be. Or I could take their last 4 of their social and their last name and make that the temporary password that they have to change. So the sky's the limit. Don't take my text message example as this is the right way to do it. That's just a fun way to show off that we can do lots of different things and interact with the users however we want. Okay, another question we have, Landesk ALM. If we were to purchase Identity Director, would we have to start from scratch? There's no way to import any workflows we have currently configured. Correct. That is correct. So for those kind of keeping track, the Identity Director product came from an acquisition of the company called Rez. It's a completely different logic and tool set from a previous product that Landesk had called the Asset Lifecycle Management. So yes, you would have to create that and start over from scratch. But in my opinion, doing this work isn't as complicated as creating the actual workflows. We do these workshops all the time, and we have to get 10 people in a room to decide on what the workflow looks like, and we have to play referee because there's a lot of excitement and angered tempers and things like that to decide what this workflow looks like. So it is once you have this done, recreating the workflows in a new system is, at least in my opinion, you're over the hard part. Okay, another question. Are you able to audit or view the types of things that end users may be trying to install? So multi-part answer. Generally speaking, yes. What we're going to do is the entitlement catalog gives us a transaction. So if they have received it from us, it's always going to be a transactional amount. We're going to see that exist in here, and you could just easily go and search for a particular end user. In our model of the denying a user being executed, we can log that to happen. Actually, I don't think I have it connected to that system, but I can open it up really quick. So this is the back-end console for that application control software. The idea behind it is you can create logs or alerts based on whatever you want to. So I don't have mine very chatty, but you could easily change it in here to say that when we have those things pop up, you could even manage what that box looks like when it pops up. But we also have this auditing section here, so we can say things like this: when they run an application that we deny, you could log it locally. We could send it to a log file. You could update that to the server, and then some kind of notification kicks off based on that. So we would be able to see what the users are doing, and maybe even alert when there's something that comes up that that we're not aware of. Okay, so hopefully that answers the questions. I don't see any more in there. Feel free to type any additional questions while we kind of wrap up here. But I appreciate everyone attending today. If we can jump back over to John and he can give away your prizes. My last follow-up would just be, this was an incredibly high-level overview. I didn't get to any of the real true detail of how the system works. This is just an example of it. If we've piqued anyone's interest and you want to know about it more, please reach out to us, talk to your salesperson, talk to me, talk to John, call our office number, whatever you want, get a hold of us. And we'd be more happy to give you a deep dive on the specifics on how it works and what it is and so on and so forth. So I appreciate everyone attending.
Okay, perfect. So Bob, the OGO backpack. Angela, I'll reach out to you and get your size for the sweatshirt. Brian, can we real quickly just go to the end slide there? I'm hoping I put your email address up there. Anything else, Brian, to add before we tie things up here?
No, I appreciate everyone attending. Just like John said, we are recording this and putting up on YouTube, so if anyone wants to review it again, it's there. Or if anyone wants, like I said, a dedicated one-on-one with just myself and your company for a couple of hours to dig into the nitty-gritty details, I'd be happy to do that. Just hit us up and we'll go from there. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks everybody. Hopefully we put a smile on your face, like the Vertrillo response there earlier. I got a laugh out of that. That was great, Brian. Thanks for joining us, Brian, and going through this today. And for all of you on the call, thanks for joining us as well. And this concludes another webinar. And please keep an eye on your emails and our website for future webinars as well. We'll do another one in November. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.